Welcome to Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy, where love, life, and legacy meet in the moments that matter most. Every week, I will share sacred reflections of my 30-year marriage before Martin's passing, as well as our life now without him. May these reflections help us live with more weight, warmth, and wisdom. Martin was a letter carrier by profession, but a life carrier by purpose. So let's take a moment and let intentional intimacy speak. Hello, this is Paula. Welcome to episode 40 of Martin Monday's Intentional Intimacy. Today's episode is about the move that carried us. And so there's a particular kind of tired, right? When you're tired, that it kind of settles into your bones, like after you move. Have you ever experienced that? You move and you just tired afterwards. And so it's not only just a physical tiredness, because God knows there's plenty of that. But it's like a deeper kind of tiredness, the kind that kind of comes from holding the space for the transition itself. And so from watching something shift, knowing that it's right, and still feeling the weight of it. So that's kind of where I found myself in this story. Montgomery, my bridge son, had just moved into his first apartment, and I was so proud of him, right? And proud in that quiet, steady kind of way that doesn't really need to announce itself, but you feel it in your chest, right? You feel it like right here. He's stepping into his life, his own independence, his own becoming. And still, I'm exhausted because moving, even when it's good, it takes something out of you. And so I remember somewhere in the middle of all that exhaustion, I remembered a different move. And even the move that I had this past weekend with Maxwell, I moved him out of his dorm for the semester so that he could come home. It wasn't too bad, but yet it still had its stories because in a freak accident, like the bungee cord from the refrigerator hit me in the face. And then he cut his foot and we had to put first aid on that and a Band-Aid. Like, it was memorable. It only took us a few hours to move him out, but yet it was memorable. And so both of these moves, Montgomery into his first apartment and then Maxwell this past weekend out of the dorm, it brought back memories of the move that Martin and I had and what we made together in what is our current home that we live in now. Now, Martin and I have been married for about 10 years, and we decided to move out of our townhome in Pennsylvania. Now, that townhome, it was my choice. If you recall from prior stories, Martin had gifted me a home. I'm 21 years old. He tells me to go and pick out a home because he was pre-approved for a mortgage. I don't know anything about buying a house at 21. But I picked out a house, and it was a nice townhome. We had spacious rooms, and I really enjoyed it. And it took some time for us to figure out where we were going to move long term, but we knew we needed to move somewhere. And so, we finally established that we're going to move to New Jersey, right? And here we are now going into a different level of home ownership with decisions and permanence in some regard for this home. But I'm embracing it. And so over the years, we would talk and we would go and visit different model homes, just like looking and dreaming, right? And just imagining like, oh my gosh, okay, could this be it or could that be it, right? And then one day it came, the house for us. Martin, he had worked so hard to make this new home possible. And there were so many different decisions that needed to be made and flooring and fixtures and, interest rate. It was just so much, so many choices. It was In some regard, it was a bit overwhelming. And then somewhere along the way, I just got tired of making choices, not because the choices weren't important, but because, you know, it just it just was a lot. And so I trusted Martin. And so when he kept asking me what I wanted, like, babe, what do you want for this? What do you want for that? And I just looked at him. I said, you know what? The thing I want most is movers. That was it. Out of everything, that was the thing I wanted most. Like looking around the house and trying to figure out how are we going through all it. I need some movers. Now, Martin, being who he was, he did not immediately agree. No, babe, I can do this. Because in his mind, we had people, we had family, we had friends, we had community, and we could do it ourselves, whatever. And because he's like, babe, I'm not afraid of the work, and babe, you asked me what I want. I'm telling you, I want movers. And so I wanted to get to my house. I wanted to have things already established because I wanted to tell you where things were supposed to be. And I didn't want it left on us to have to do it. I wanted to lay my head down at night, that first night, and not be that exhausted where I could just take in what all had happened. And so Martin listened to me and he said, okay, babe, we're going to get movers. So I remember the day we moved. Oh my goodness. And watching Martin, because for the first time in a long time, he wasn't the one that was carrying the load. He wasn't the one that was doing the heavy lifting. And to be honest, he was like a fish out of water, y'all. He didn't know quite what to do with himself. All the effort, all the preparation, and now he had to stand still and watch somebody else and just receive. Like that just felt foreign to him, and I could see him struggling and see him wrestling with it. Meanwhile, I was in motion. This goes here, that goes there, directing and guiding and telling them every little thing and what to do with what. Be careful with that. Okay, nope, that can go. Like, listen, I was barking orders. Right? I'll see you in New Jersey. Deuces. We'll see you later. And so when they finally arrived to the house, I had everything marked and labeled where things were supposed to go. They were carrying stuff, placing it in the house, settling things down with care, putting things back together piece by piece, until suddenly, here we are in our home, all moved in, not quite halfway unpacked, but not overwhelmed and not worn down in any way, right? We were able to just take it all in. We were there. We made our bed that night. We laid down in a space that had already felt like it could hold us. It already felt like a place that was home. And I remember Martin, he looked over at me and he just kind of like smiled. And he said, thanks, babe. Because while, I could have done it all, I didn't have to. And that made a difference. I'll reflect on the other side. So, as I share that story, I realized that there's a quiet truth that's in the memory that I hold. One that I really didn't fully understand then, but trust me, I feel it really now. Especially after helping my sons move, even more recently this past weekend. We were all taught to value effort, to push, to carry, to prove, right? To work hard. And Martin, God knows, he totally embodied that. His work ethic was very real. It was very steady. It was unquestioned. And quite honestly, it was oftentimes unmatched. But what I came to love just as much were the moments when he wasn't working. When the moments of him allowing himself to rest, to laugh, to just simply be. Because it was in those moments that a different version of Martin showed up. That's when we saw his creativity. That's when we saw his softness. And we saw parts of him that didn't come from striving, but simply came from stillness. And I realize now that balance, it isn't something you arrive at once and keep forever. It's not. It's kind of something that you have to choose. You have to be intentional about, like intentional intimacy. Because sometimes you're the one who is carrying everything. And sometimes you need to let someone else carry it. Even if you can do it yourself. In fact, especially if you can do it yourselves, because there are parts of your life, there are parts of you that will only emerge when you're not weighted down by doing. And so I think about that first night in our new home, how we were not exhausted, how we were able to feel it and just take in the beauty of all that had happened, how we could actually just be present in that moment. And I think about that even now, almost 25 years later, like helping my son step into his own space, Montgomery, and helping Max step out of a space and to return back home and make space for his stuff. Yeah, I had to put it in a corner somewhere. But I remember feeling the pride. I remember feeling the tiredness. I remember feeling the shift of all the changes, right? And I understood something a little deeper. That you don't just build a life through effort. Yes, life takes effort. It does. But you actually experience life through presence. I'm going to say that again. You don't just build a life through effort. You've got to experience life through presence. So, if there's anything that you take from today's episode, let it be this. Not a list, not a formula. It's simply this. I need you to notice what you're carrying. And then ask yourself, does all of this belong to me? Or is there something, even just one thing, that I can let someone else hold and let someone else carry? Just because I'm capable doesn't mean that I should do it. So your assignment this week, if you're ready, is to take a quiet moment and begin to notice where you might be doing more than you need to be doing. Not because you're incapable, because guess what? You're very capable. But because you've forgotten, perhaps, what it feels like to receive. Because you give so much. But the balance is giving and receiving. So I think back on us. We built our home with hard work, but we actually learned how to live in it when we finally set some of it down and realized that it was not all for us to carry. And I hope that you will do the same. Thanks so much for joining me with Martin Mondays this week. I'll see you next week. Take care. Martin Mondays continues on Tuesday with the Tuesday Tea. Check it out and join me and take a sip. You know, Martin used to say a lot of things. Some were funny, some were wise, but one thing he often said was, wow. Wow. Just those 3 letters. It spoke volumes. It meant a lot. When he didn't know what to say, wow. When he was excited about something, wow. when he was confused, perhaps, or even frustrated, he said, wow. And you know, he's still saying wow. Through this bracelet, he's still saying wow, because he's still saying, may your whole life prove that God is good. And so in closing, that's my hope for you this week. May you have wow moments as you too are living out legacy. Live in the wow. Live in the reality of knowing that your whole life is good. Live in the heartbeat of Martin Mondays and intentional intimacy. May that anchor you in this week as you build legacy, one wow, one moment at a time. See you next week.